So I was scrolling Twitter the other day and I scrolled past an announcement for a Mr. and Mrs. Smith reboot starring Donald Glover. Well, actually, it's a TV series adaptation of 2005's movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith starring Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, which in turn was a remake of 1996 Mr. and Mrs. Smith's TV show starring Quantum Leap's very own Scott Bakula. Remaking films has a lengthy history in Hollywood dating back to the silent era. Sigmund Lubin's version of Edwin S. Porter's The Great Train Robbery, released less than a year after the original, was among the first remakes. Even if it seems like Hollywood's present method, remakes back then had more purpose than they do now. After sound was added, Hollywood began reproducing silent films with sound, giving these films a new lease of life. When colour was introduced, the same thing happened again. Movies like A Star is Born, 1954, and The Count of Monte Cristo, 1934, benefited from being recreated using Hollywood's most recent technological breakthroughs. With an average of 19 remakes per year, the 2000s were supposed to have seen the most blockbuster Hollywood remakes ever released in a single year. In 2005 alone, 33 remakes were released in cinemas. The current film industry is rife with spin-offs, sequels, prequels, reboots and remakes. Even though these films frequently receive negative reviews from critics, they frequently do better financially than people may imagine. Despite the generally unimpressed reception from critics, surveys have revealed that sequels and reboots represent the most commercially successful market area within the film business when compared to any other sector. Typically, the formula is as follows. A studio will opt to fund a sequel, remake or reboot at the same time in the future after an average to good moderate picture opens and earns X amount millions at the box office. Consumer interest is initially good between streaming rights, box office sales and rentals through outlets such as Prime. It makes sense that the majority of viewers would reason, I like the first movie, so I should like the second. This is when you may begin to compare it to television. Consider this, during the 20th century people would yell about movies, but at the beginning of the 21st, box sets began to invade this area and take centre stage in Monday morning office conversations. This is due to the fact that a movie only offers you 2 or 3 hours to get to know a group of people and story, which significantly reduces the amount of audience engagement and narrative hook it may have. Conversely, television provides you with a cast that you can relate to for anything from 13 to 100 hours, a startling increase. This implies that you innately are more interested in seeing a series through to the end because of the time you invested in it. Thus, the reasoning for bringing back Mr. and Mrs. Smith as a TV show and not a movie. For sequels, the reasoning is much the same. Consider the recent popular multiverse film genre, in which several films are set spanning over years or even decades in the same universe. Despite all of its flaws, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is their most well-known illustration of this. If you see 2 or 3 good films, you have a similar but ultimately gratifying plot. There's an excellent chance you'll want to see the other 20. The same line of reasoning applies to reboots and remakes of popular series like Blade Runner and Aliens, and even the growing number of live-action Disney movies like Aladdin and The Lion King. This formula's widespread appeal has been reportedly demonstrated. According to a 2019 Radio Times story, since 1993 there has been an astounding 700% more Hollywood remakes and sequels. Their popularity at the box office has also soared. Again, in 1993, there were just 2 remakes, prequels, sequels, spin-offs or reboots in the top 20 highest grossing movies. This percentage rose to 18 out of 20 in 2018. So why do studios finance so many sequels and remakes? It may seem obvious, but the reason it works is that it generates revenue. In the end, you have to keep in mind that movie companies are a business. This means that when a studio produces a movie, its main goal is to ensure that the movie's worldwide box office receipts pay the production costs. This means that Hollywood production boards will examine films and trends that are tried and tested, that is, ones that have consistently been popular and profitable when analysing what appeals to moviegoers. This implies that the higher number of people who watch sequels and remakes, the higher the revenue and the greater amount of funding, production and distribution. In other words, as long as they are still in demand, they will continue to be produced and the criticism will essentially be ignored. This also brings us to the woke or diversity trend. Hollywood isn't pushing these types of movies of woke or whatever buzzword you want to use. They put out these movies because they think it's the current trend and that it will make money. I can assure you Hollywood isn't some left-wing utopia. Hollywood cares about one thing and one thing only: money. And with the recent flop of the Marvels and its crop of poor TV shows, they will of course course correct. Because at the end of the day, the current trend isn't working. The criticism now outweighs the demand, so things will ultimately change. Are remakes worse than ever? Well, even while it may be simple to criticise remakes solely for existing, there are different tendencies in both quality and reception among critics. The movie and television review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes had compiled a list of the 12 worst remakes ever made. Even though they were all published after 2000, only 3 of the lowest 5, and 5 of the 12 are from the same decade. Although there is a limited and extreme sample size available, no clear conclusion appears to have been reached. Reboots are often well liked by critics, according to the 2019 Rotten Tomatoes article, even if they average a lower score of 47% compared to 81% for original films. Even Disney and James Bond are 2 instances where the majority of the reviews the websites compiled are favourable. Overall, not everything is terrible news. Even though the formula isn't slowing down and won't alter as long as people continue to watch reboots, remakes and sequels, after a few entries, a popular series may benefit from a fresh start. Making a film that is gratifying can still come from reimagining pre-existing content instead of resorting to clumsy storyboarding. Conversely, it is important to note that, on the other hand, people are more open-minded and welcoming of independent and smaller studio films than they have ever been. This demonstrates that uniqueness is coming from smaller independent studios like A24, films such as Uncut Gems, The Lighthouse, Moonlight, and Anna Perez films, Vice, Hair, Joy, Lawless, for example, even though it won't come from industry heavyweights like Paramount and Warner Brothers. In contemporary films, spin-offs, prequels, sequels, reboots, remakes are all commonplace. It's not impossible to locate a decent movie among them, and it doesn't mean that good cinema is extinct, even though it can feel like mining for gold in your back garden. You might be astonished if you're given something fresh from a studio or director you've never heard or tried. Well, that's enough rambling for one day.